Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the next episode of the Vulnerable series, where me and Kimberly talk to a different person each week, talking about their chronic illness. Maybe a chronic illness, maybe be something that makes them vulnerable, because that's why the series is called The Vulnerable. Um, but yeah, it's going to be really cool today because me and Kimberly are joined with Ashley, and Ashley has different chronic illnesses, which is kind of cool, but it's also not cool to have them. But it's 50-50, isn't it? But yeah, it's gonna be really good fun. And Ashley has her own podcast as well, so it's all pretty cool. We all have a podcast here, so it's very good. It's very good. We didn't have to explain what a podcast is before we started, so because as all of us here, when we have guests on that haven't been on podcast before, we normally have to explain it like what happened and that, but today we didn't be able to do that because we've all got our own. So really, really cool. But Kimberly, I'll start with you to do your introduction, and then Ashley can do hers.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kimberly. I'm the host of Self Love Corner. I'm also the host of Strong_Self Love here on Instagram. I met Mason back in 2020, and we've been friends ever since. And Ashley, I just met her was it a few weeks ago or maybe a month ago? And we instantly clicked. I was like, I knew this girl. So I'm super excited for this conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be so fun. It's gonna be so fun. And yeah, me and Kimberly have known each other since 2020, which it seems longer than that, really. But it's crazy how time flies. But Ashley, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Again, thank you guys so much for having me on this podcast. Mason, you and I actually started following each other. I don't know how long ago it was. And so after I met Kim and she had told me, oh, by the way, I want you to collaborate on a podcast and everything. And it was so ironic that it ended up that she collaborates with you. Yeah, when Kim and I met and I had her on my podcast, Chronic Convos, which is on Spotify and YouTube, as well as Instagram, she and I were like soul sisters. We have a very similar personality. And then just again, with the chronic illness community, you kind of become close to people like really quickly just because you feel understood and validated. And while you might have to describe your disease or diseases to that person because maybe they're not familiar with it, you don't have to go into like a ton of detail because they can relate. So, my whole thing is I'm also a clinical social worker. And so I've always enjoyed advocating for others. And it wasn't until I got sick that I learned that I really have to advocate for myself. And with that being said, that's why I started my own podcast. And I just want to get the word out and develop connections with different people in our community, whether it's in here in the States or, in the UK or wherever that person may be, just so they don't feel alone and they feel seen and heard and they can spread awareness too. So, again, I'm just so excited to be on this podcast. And my podcast is also through another nonprofit organization called WAAA, which is Workers with Autoimmune Ailments Alliance. And we're trying to push for legislation to make it possible for accommodations in the workplace for people with chronic illnesses or autoimmune issues. Being on the heels of COVID, even during COVID, I'm learning that there's a lot of people within our community who weren't given the proper accommodations because, well, you have an invisible illness. So you're looked at as you're not sick, because people think that when we're chronically ill, that we're just like healing over all the time. And while that might be true, we're trying to be functional human beings and we're trying to just go on with our lives. Like right now, as I'm talking, I'm at a pain level of probably a 6 right now. But you wouldn't know that because I don't want to give in to that pain. So it just kind of varies. So, so my platform's been made possible through WAAA. So again, I'm so excited to be on this podcast.
Yeah, it's really cool um, that you do your podcast, and it's actually really cool. We all do our podcasts, but it's really cool that you've decided to do it. Like, how long have you been doing yours podcast actually for?
So I just released episode 5, so it's still really new. So I'm learning, things every day. And Kim has kind of taken me under her wing as well on how to like, you know, um, promote visibility and just be more engaging with my viewers and subscribers. Sorry, viewers, subscribers, and listeners because of YouTube and and Spotify. Um, so I'm still trying to build a following and just reach out to as many people as possible. So again, I'm still learning. I'm still learning how to make it more high quality and how to edit it and cool things I can do and just, different conversations I can have with people. So yeah, it hasn't been that long.
Yeah. No.
So
No, when you got episode 5. Yeah, so I did see your episode with Kimberly. It was very good. Um,
thank you.
but we find with the podcast that it's hard. It's hard because sometimes with episodes and how far they get seen and who sees it, because like I find each episode's different. So you might get one episode that's more people see it than another.
Right.
Um, and I find actually Spotify is probably the best way for people to well, I find more people listen to that than YouTube. Um,
Oh, okay.
um, but it's dependent. It's dependent on what episodes. If people share it and people listen to it, it's all dependent. But it's very good fun though when you speak to your different people on there.
I wanted
Yeah,
to
and
say some.
oh, go ahead, Kim.
I wanted to say something that was so funny. When you said Kim has taken me under her wing, I actually learned from Mason. So this is like, you know what I mean? Like I learned from Mason, you learned from me, and it's amazing the community and the support we receive.
Yeah, and I learned from me. But yeah, how I found out about it in the first place actually was I don't know. I created mine in lockdown when with me about COVID. Um, so basically, I decided to create one. And I was talking to myself for a few episodes, the first few episodes, probably the first 5 episodes actually. Um, and then I didn't know what to do. I was thinking people get bored of me, and then I found out you can actually talk to other people at different places in the world. Um, and then me and Kimberly. I think we met off. Oh yeah, we met on Instagram. Well, we found each other somehow. I don't know how we did, but some. Well, I think we. And then um, I created my podcast, and then I think it was a year or two later, Kimberly wanted to create her one. Um, and then now she's flying with hers, and now she's helping you. So it's very good. It's very good. We've all helped each other.
Yeah, and I'm willing to learn from you both as well. And I hope that we can continue to collaborate in the future too. And again, I've had Kim on before and I'd love to have her again, but Mason, I'd love to have you on my podcast
Yeah.
as well whenever you want to share your story. Because the other thing I've noticed is everybody has a story, chronic illness or not. And if we would just take the time to listen to each other, we'd realize that we have a lot more things in common than like differences. So
Yeah,
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 I
yeah.
just I just love this. And again, thank you for giving me this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Definitely, and yeah, I've said before, I'd love to come on your podcast as well, because I've been on different podcasts and they're all different. Like I've been on one recently, a couple of weeks ago. Well, no, not a couple of weeks ago, but a month or two ago. And they wanted to hear about my story as well, so it's very nice. Every podcast is different, so you might have one podcast that gives you half a dozen questions beforehand, which I prefer just to go with the flow. But if people some people guess you may have, I might request, I want these questions set out for me, and then I can like practice to answer them. And
Right.
some people do that, but some people say you got a famous person on, for example, they would probably want you to do that. But
Right.
but normal people, not normal people, like just like it depends on the person, really, doesn't it? Who you have on and what your focus is,
Right. Yeah,
really.
100%. And again, I just like focusing on the story. And who knows your story better than yourself, you know? So, but yeah, I've noticed people are different, but so far that's kind of the theme I've been doing is just tell your story and I'll ask questions along the way, but this is about you and your story and whatever you'd like people to know about it or what you'd like to share, because it's also very empowering, as you probably both know yourselves, of how empowering it is. And then again, it's just validating when people can relate and they're not
Mhm,
judging because they've been through a similar experience in the healthcare system, in their diagnosis journey, whatever, and the different symptoms we all experience. So, yeah, it's very powerful.
definitely. I used
Yeah.
to what I used to do series on my podcast. So I used to do series one. I have a certain amount of episodes, and then I used to do that. But I stopped doing that purely because I was thinking, I don't think these series are going to end. We're going to keep going up in numbers. So why don't we do a thing where we just focus a series around a certain thing? So this series, The Vulnerables, that focuses on sharing people's journeys. Um, and another series maybe is about hobbies or something like that, or autism. So there's so many different things you can do it. I did do it quite about. I think I got to series five, and then I thought, if I keep doing it in numbers, I'm gonna be like, I have to keep on this all the time. So it's easier not
Right. It's a
put them in
full-time job.
numbers. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And then say I don't do an episode in a while. I like to do like seasonal episodes, so maybe on Easter or Christmas or New Year's. So say if you didn't do one for certain reason, maybe because of your chronic illness. Um, but yeah, others do it like some podcasts have episode 907 or something like that. They just continue and continue. But
Right.
it's funny how people do things in different ways.
Like
Yeah, and I've seen some of your, oh, go ahead, Kim. Sorry, go
sorry.
ahead. Go
I
ahead.
remember in the beginning of this series when me and Mason started it, sadly it was the start of the terrible thing with my toes amputated. So we had to put it on pause, right, Mason? Like it
Yeah,
was just life.
yeah, it's funny. It's funny in the way how it ended up, like the start, because I think one of the first guests. It's gonna be funny when that episode goes out because I think we only recorded one guest. We did an episode of us, and then we did someone else, and then we'll when the episode goes out, we'll say the episode we done with you probably 2 years ago now is out, and then well they'll completely understand why. We're like I think we told them, but yeah, it's funny because once once at the very beginning I did an episode on the podcast because I did when I first started out, I did so many because I wanted to keep doing them. So it's, like a TV series where they do it in a year in advance. That's how mine got.
Right.
And
Oh, okay, cool. All
one
right.
episode went out, and then when it went out, the person says, "I did that a year ago." So, um, you kind of feel bad, but I think it's important to do things when people are okay to do them. So we had a little break at the start, and then we're better now. We're doing them more quite often, aren't we, Kimberly?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. From the last year when I started to get sick, I just had my final, hopefully, surgery on April 4th. So, so when I was recording with Ashley, I think I was like a few days out of my surgery. Like
You
it's
were like a
crazy.
week. Yeah, and I couldn't
Yeah.
believe like you were like willing to come on. I'm like, are you sure? Or maybe it was a few days. Was it a
Yeah,
few days?
it was a few days,
Oh
and I
my
mean,
God, that's right.
that just shows you how much strength, how much like pain tolerance we can actually hold. Like, I don't know. Wait, Ashley, you said what's your pain on a scale of 1 to 10 right now?
Right now it's a 5, kind of a 6. Actually, it's a 6 right now. Yeah,
Yeah. See, mine's a 7. And
right.
Mason, what's yours?
Probably two.
Yeah,
Oh,
see, but
I
we all
can't
have
remember the
pain.
last time I was at a 2.
All
But
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yet I can function probably at a 7 like you're functioning.
Yeah. We just have to
And
learn to live with it.
Yeah. No one would know.
yeah,
No one
yeah,
would
and if
know.
only people could understand that more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Because
so.
yeah, a lot of people that I come across who aren't sick are like, "Oh, well, but you're happy, you're go lucky." And I'm like, "Well, I've decided it's a choice. I need to have a positive attitude, and just because I'm not talking about it doesn't mean I'm not living with it daily. I just don't want to focus on that right now if I'm like at a birthday party or something like,
Yeah.
because that could really bring somebody down, and I don't want to do that. So, um,
Yeah.
and this is my escape for like an hour or two, like from what I'm dealing with. So, yeah.
Ashley, you mentioned you had a lot of chronic illnesses. Do you mind sharing what chronic illnesses you have?
Sure. So it's actually funny you bring up COVID because COVID was kind of, it was more than COVID for me. So now thinking back on it, I'm convinced in my adolescence that I had a lot of illnesses that the doctors just didn't know what to look for, or they thought it was something else. I've had migraines since like fourth grade or maybe even earlier. I used to get double ear infections and high fevers all the time. I was always getting injured, but I was always blamed on, oh, she's just a kid, like, or, oh, you're dehydrated for your migraines. And I've always had allergies. I've always been really sensitive to things. And I've always been that kid that if other kids were sick, I got so sick. And even in my own family, if there was like a cold in our household, it would be like the plague for me. Like it always just gets so sick. And I've always had sinus infections and everything like that. Um, when I was 13, I was diagnosed with something called PCOS or polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is a chronic illness. It's not an autoimmune issue. But when I was diagnosed, I also started gaining weight. And there was a part of me that was an emotional eater, but there was also a part of me, I think I was gaining weight from all the medications. And now that I know this as an adult, I believe I was very inflamed and they just didn't know that at the time. But at age 13, I was told you're not going to be able to have kids, or it's going to be really tough and you need to lose weight. I'd go in for a cold, you need to lose weight. Like that was what it was always like growing up. And it wasn't until 2014 when I got hospitalized because I was having really severe migraines. Drinking or eating anything felt like gasoline going down. Um, and my weight was just kind of I wasn't losing or gaining. It was just kind of plateaued, even though I wasn't taking in a lot. And then the high fever ended up causing like a stroke-like migraine, which is called a hemiplegic migraine, which you might be familiar with, Kim. And so I had to be hospitalized for 6 days. They did a lot of exploratory surgeries, endoscopies, colonoscopies, laparoscopies. They ruled out endometriosis, they ruled out Lyme disease, they ruled out everything until I hit the marker for something called familial Mediterranean fever, which is a genetic autoinflammatory disease. It causes really high fevers. When I was in the hospital, I had a fever of 104.6. So, I could have died from that. And I remember at the time I was a part of an organization, a sisterhood organization that's local to California. Actually, it's kind of nationwide, but it's more popular in California. And um, this group of girls who were supposed to be my sisters started telling me that I was making my sicknesses up, that I wasn't really in the hospital. I had a few cancer scares because my white blood count, all my inflammatory markers were through the roof. And I said, I have a cancer scare because they were upset that I couldn't go to different events because I had to drive all up and down California by myself because at that time they had just cut off contact with me. They ganged up on me and told me that you are not sick. And that took a lot on my psyche, because I'm like, I know I'm not feeling well. I feel like death right now. And, they're supposed to be my sisters. And little did I know that I would, run into that kind of backlash, throughout my life. Um, but after my familial Mediterranean diagnosis, and the funny part is my parents are supposed to have the markers for it and they don't. So I have no idea where this disease came from. I'm guessing, like everything else, it's on the recessive side because everything else I have, like no one else in my family has, although my mom's chronic illness journey is just starting now. Um, I finally did something about my weight because the only solution for me was to get a sleeve gastrectomy, or gastric sleeve where they cut, 75% of your stomach out. And I did lose 100 pounds. And I was told by doctors that if you lose weight, everything's going to be better. Your PCOS is going to be better. In fact, you might be able to reverse it. You're going to feel a whole lot better. Well, that wasn't the case because 6 months later, I got diagnosed with osteoarthritis in my knee and fibromyalgia. And when I got diagnosed with fibromyalgia, I cried for a week because we have a family friend who has fibromyalgia. And as you all know, every disease, every disorder, every whatever, is on a spectrum. You and I could have the same illness, but that doesn't mean we have the exact same symptoms or severity, right? So, but I didn't know that at the time. And I cried for a week because this family member would always be very negative and always talk about their pain level, no matter what we were doing. And it would just, even if we didn't ask, it would just kind of like, and so I thought, oh my God, that's what I'm going to turn into. But then the light bulb went on after I was done crying it out. And even though I was kind of uncertain of what this would look like, I made the choice that it's all about attitude and I have to be positive. This is a chronic illness and I have to make the best of it. And little did I know that that wouldn't be my only chronic illness. Do you want me to keep going? Because I warned you guys ahead of time that it's a lengthy story. So stop me at any time.
Yeah, keep going. Keep going.
Okay.
No, yes,
Okay. Cool.
please.
Thank you. All right. I feel like I'm talking to myself, but thank you. Okay. Um, so then fast forward to 2019, my knee that I had osteoarthritis in, I wasn't able to walk on it. So I was working, I told you I'm a clinical social worker, so I was working in a skilled nursing facility, which was a 240 bed facility, so quite large. And I wasn't able to put any weight on my knee. So I was on crutches, and I actually went to several surgeons who told me wait for it to get worse. And I'm like, please define what that means because I'm already on crutches. Like, do I need to be in a wheelchair? Like, and they were very dismissive. Finally, I found a surgeon who realized I'm not a textbook case and realized that it's impacting your quality of life and we need to do something. So that's when I had my first joint related surgery. Because to date, I've had 27 surgeries and counting. Um, so after that, I was fine. And that was 2018, I'm sorry. Yeah, 2019. That was February 2019. Fast forward to December of 2019, again working in a skilled nursing facility. It was pneumonia and flu season, and even though I had gotten vaccinated, there was like another bug going around, and this is when we're just learning of COVID, right? In the you know, overseas, right? And in China and in other parts of Asia. And I got really, really sick. In fact, so my birthday is in early January. So this was December. And I remember my husband had cooked dinner for myself and my girlfriends. And I was so nauseous. I was so sick. I had a high fever despite being on medication to bring those fevers down from my FMF. Um, and then I remember I called my doctor and I'm like, something's wrong. Like, I don't feel well. And he's like, I think you need to go to the emergency room. And so en route there, I remember telling my husband, and it was getting harder for me to talk, but I'm like, my chest hurts, and it wasn't chest pain like a heart attack. It was pain like there was an elephant sitting on my chest. And it got so bad that by the time I got to the ER to check myself in, I couldn't even say my name because I was like so out of breath, and I was in so much pain, and they saw that I was holding my chest and that I could barely talk. So thankfully they, got me in right away. That would be another 7 days before I would know what was going on. They found out that I had some lung infection, and I had to be on 5 liters of oxygen because my saturation level was 79%, which for a normal adult is 90 to 100%, depending on if you have something like asthma or COPD, which I do have asthma. I've had that since 6th grade, but it's always been kind of, kept in line and managed. I've only had 2 really severe asthma attacks in my life, which were like near-death experiences. That's a different story that's another story for another day, though. Um, that's when all of my autoimmune issues started popping up. They found out I had something called costochondritis, which is inflammation of the rib cage. They saw that my lungs lit up like a Christmas tree, but they couldn't figure out what caused it. To this day, I'm convinced it was a form of COVID. However, the only caveat to that is no one got sick who was around me. I had lots of friends and family, including my husband, who were there in the hospital with me daily, and um, they didn't get sick. None of the staff got sick, so I don't know. But there's a part of me that's like, why else would I have those issues? And that triggered a menagerie of issues. So the costochondritis, they found out I had a degenerative thoracic spine, which is, the part between your shoulder blades. Um, and so on top of that, they started finding all this arthritis. I thought I was having a really bad fibro flare, but it ended up being, no, you have arthritis. I've always had psoriasis as a kid as well. Now it turned into psoriatic arthritis. Then on top of that, in the hospital, my heart rate was really elevated, which I'm usually cool as a cucumber, not only personality wise, blood pressure wise, heart rate wise. My heart rate was in the 150s, and a normal heart rate for an adult is 60 to 90. Well, it turns out I have something called sinus tachycardia, which is when your heart rate just decides to be high, and it's not because I'm excited. I wish that was why that was the case. Um, they couldn't figure it out, and thankfully didn't have to really go on heart medications per se for that, but they're like, it's just something you gotta learn to deal with. And it took a while after my hospitalization to be comfortable with that, because I will feel it go up once in a while. um and because I was dealing with that, then it was deemed I had anxiety, which to this day, like anybody with chronic illness, as you both know, there's going to be anxiety when we're getting testing, when we're not feeling well. But like they said, no, you have an anxiety disorder. And it's like, well, wouldn't you have a little anxiety if your heart feels like it's pounding out of your chest? Like, so it took a while to get that, to get used to that feeling. And then also, from that, well, now you have Raynaud's disease, which I know, Kim, you're very familiar with because it's a form of scleroderma. It's in the scleroderma umbrella. And so it's a circulation issue. So my fingers and toes will turn different colors. They'll turn really bright white to purplish, bluish, pinkish. Um, so that was something else they had to figure out how to, deal with. I'm sorry, Kim, did you want to say something? I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, yes, Raynaud's is part of like the scleroderma family, basically. That was
Right.
it.
Yeah, and what's funny is I didn't I didn't know that until more recently, because I told you, Kim, on when you were on our podcast, I have a cousin by marriage who has scleroderma. And I just never knew the two were related, or that they fell under the same, um, you know, umbrella. So not only is my diagnosis list getting longer, so is my medication list. I now for sure have like my own pharmacy if I didn't already. So I had to go on blood pressure medications, not for blood pressure, but for my Raynaud's and my sinus tachycardia. Um, and then my degenerative thoracic spine turned into DDD, which is degenerative disc disease, because they found out that there's also stenosis in my lower back, which um, I had a feeling that there was something wrong with my back, because I was rear-ended in a car accident in 2012. And even though I got physical therapy for it and I was overweight at the time, they're like, oh, it'll get better and you need to lose weight. And that's what's causing your back problems. But I knew that there was something, and this was before I was super in tune with my body. I just knew it's never gotten better. Well, sure enough, here, this is why. And my dad has spinal stenosis and has had a back surgery for it, but it wouldn't be until later on that I finally got a diagnosis for my back. I'm trying to remember. I feel like I'm forgetting like different issues I have. Oh yeah. So I've always had really bad allergies, but all of a sudden like different scents, different detergents, different everything was like flaring. My sinuses up, was flaring, my allergies up. It turns out I have a chronic condition called vasomotor rhinitis, where you're just really sensitive to different smells and um, and just a lot of different like things. And then I thought I only had a few allergies that turned into more allergies. Um, and during this, and then I also found out I had medication allergies when I was hospitalized. Um, that took a lot out of me. And so, before this hospitalization and COVID, um, I had only had a few surgeries. And so, and I say that because my sinuses got so inflamed and so clogged from chronic sinus infections, I had to have a sinus surgery. So that was surgery number one in 2020. um, then my knees both started acting up again, both of them. So on each side, I had to have them cleaned out again, like I had in 2019. On top of that, my right hip started um, hurting so much I wasn't able to sleep well. And that's the other thing. I've always had insomnia, and I'm sure you guys can relate to that. Um, I didn't realize though, and this is why I'm pretty convinced that I've had a lot of this growing up, because I didn't realize when you're in pain, you cannot sleep no matter how tired you are, even if it feels like you haven't slept in a week. Like you don't know that. But this was like pain, like I couldn't walk right. I couldn't, it just really hurt. Well, sure enough, they first wanted, for insurance purposes, wanted to clean out the arthritis, because they saw that I was bone on bone, which in both of my knees I was bone on bone. Again, they were calling it osteoarthritis. It might be my psoriatic arthritis, but there was always a part of me that's like, no, I know that there's something bigger, because I've worked in hospitals as a nursing assistant and also a social worker, and just knowing the medical terminology I know, and then what I've been through, this just doesn't feel right. Um, well, then I needed to get my first surgery that is going to complete my, goal of turning into a robot or the bionic woman or the Terminator, whatever you want to say. I had to get a hip replacement. And that was crazy, because this was during COVID. So I was in the hospital for 5 days, and it's usually an outpatient procedure. But thankfully, my surgeon who did my knees was like, he knew, like, no, you need to stay because of my Raynaud's, which made my sinus tachycardia go up, and because of the blood loss. So, but I had to be in the hospital all by myself because they weren't allowing visitors. So that was an interesting experience. And I had my iPad and my cell phone, but to connect with people, but it's not the same. Um, you know, um, go ahead. Go ahead, Kim.
Oh no, I'm just agreeing with you. Like
Oh, okay.
it's just so crazy how you've been through so much, yet like you have such a life to you. Like,
Thank
I
you.
think that there comes a time and a place where we deal with so much and then it's just like we can talk about it like it's nothing, but like in reality it's like it's a blessing you're here talking to us about your
Oh,
experience.
thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, again, I've also, as you can tell, I've developed a sense of humor about it. And again, I just feel like that's what I have to do because I feel if I just allow myself to feel, excuse my language, shitty all the time, and my attitude goes to that, like what kind of life am I living? It's not very high quality. And no judgment to people who do live their lives that way. I'm just deciding that that's not what I want to do. And that's also during COVID when I started chronicling all of my surgeries because there was just something in me that felt like this isn't going to be the last surgery, like, and now I've had, think that what brought me up to 7 or 8 surgeries by now with my hip replacement. And then I had to have both knees cleaned out again because of the arthritis. Um, and that brought me to last year. And um, with that hospitalization I had during COVID, I unfortunately had to resign from my job because it took me a year and a half for my lungs to fully recover from that, from everything to kind of recover, and for me to be used to my new normal of just not feeling well all the time. And this was more than fibro. But it was also helpful knowing I had a name for it. But now I needed to go see a rheumatologist who I have an amazing rheumatologist. And it's also taken me 12 years to get my team. I think I have 14 specialists on my team of doctors now and counting. Um, but it's taken me a long time because you both know what it's like to be able to have a doctor that validates you, that connects with you, that understands you, that realizes you're not a textbook case and this isn't a one size fits all approach. Um, so bring me back to last year, um, where I finally got a diagnosis. I had to start getting a lot of injections in my back because I was in so much pain. And I also had to get nerve ablations in my neck because that was causing something called cervigenic migraines, which start in your cervical spine, your neck, and envelop your head. And there's vertigo and nausea and everything like that. Um, so finally, my pain management doctor, my primary doctor, and my rheumatologist were all in agreement that I do have ankylosing spondylitis, which is a degenerative progressive disease of the spine where eventually your spinal discs will fuse together in an attempt to heal themselves. So those are with all the surgeries I've had, those are the ones I'm most afraid of, and it's to be determined when I'll get to that point. Because your spine is not something to play around with. There are so many nerves, and I have faith in all my doctors. I see a specialist for this, but it's still scary. And it's something that if I can avoid getting done for a while, I would be okay with that. I'm still in a lot of pain. I think my back hurts the most. But then that also, like I told you, there was this gut feeling that there was something more that to like psoriatic arthritis. I found out that not only do I have the peripheral ones, but I have the axial one, so it affects all my joints basically in my, not only my back, but it also affects my hips and knees. So that made a lot more sense to me as to why I'm needing all these joint surgeries and injections and everything like that. So fast forward to last year when I was working in a hospital, it was my dream job. I was working in the emergency room as a social worker because mental health, as well as just helping others, has just always been my passion, and destigmatizing all of that, especially mental health. I literally was bending over to pick up my headphones that I dropped in my kitchen, these stupid headphones, and I felt a pop, a crack, and a shift in my knee. And after that, I could not walk very well on my knee. Again, for insurance purposes, and again, being told, well, you're too young to have all of these issues, I had to get my knee arthritis cleaned out. I had a feeling that I wasn't going to heal well from it, or that it wasn't going to fix the problem. Sure enough, it wasn't. So last December, and it was funny, my surgeon who I had trusted and who had done my hip and knee procedures, he didn't do knee replacements, but he told me he didn't think I needed a knee replacement. And again, because of my age. And so that was a little defeating because he had been, helping me all along. And then so I had to get 3 or 4 opinions before I found my surgeon who understood me and again told me if it's affecting your quality of life, you need to do this. At first, other surgeons were like, you need a partial knee, but eventually you'll need a total knee. And I'm like, well, then why don't we just do total? Like, why? And I'm like, I don't think I'm going to um, respond well to a partial. Like, I think I need to go full throttle. And this isn't because I want it, but I just know my body. And so, again, this is where advocating for yourself, like, really, like, I wasn't taking no for an answer. And then again, knowing all the medical terminology as well as my personal experiences, I do, it didn't make sense to me. And so I was going to be in pain, but keep um, looking for a physician, a surgeon who did understand me and where it did make sense. And I finally found that. So I had a total knee replacement in December of last year. It's been a very slow recovery. Again, it would normally be an outpatient procedure, but with all my risk factors, I had it done in the hospital and I knew it wasn't just going to be there overnight. I ended up being there another 6 days. Apparently, that's my number is 6 because every hospitalization, it's always been like 6 days. Um, so, and again, it was because my Raynaud's flared up, my sinus tachycardia flared up, same thing. Heart rate was at 150, Raynaud's, um, due to the blood loss. Now, the scary part, and I don't think I shared this with you, Kim, and I guess this just shows like if I need another surgery, I need another surgery. I actually woke up during my surgery. They had done the reversal too early, and I know I wasn't imagining things because this has never happened to me. I think once when I was having my wisdom teeth pulled out, I woke up for like a second but went back to sleep because I could tell they were doing something. I'm like, oh, but I'm so tired, and I fell back to sleep. So that's the only memory of waking up during a surgery I have. I know because I opened my eyes, I felt them suturing me up, despite having a nerve block in my lower back. Um, I felt them and it was painful, and I remember seeing the surgical drape, and I remember looking around for the anesthesiologist, and I couldn't say anything because I had an oxygen mask on, but I gave him a look like um I know this is not supposed to happen. um and so apparently he gave me something again, but it didn't really do much because I was still pretty aware of that. And then in the recovery room, that was a disaster too. They were playing like a game of Tetris um, because the hospital was under construction, so it was a very small recovery room. And they literally ran into my knee with another gurney. And thankfully, I had a nurse who was such a badass, and she like called her supervisor because I was I have a high pain tolerance like you both do. I was in tears. I was just, and I was also just so upset from waking up during the surgery. Like I just couldn't believe that this was happening. But I've had two nerve ablations since, and my neck, just recovering from one last week actually. So, and I'm in lots of physical therapy for my knees still, and my neck. And for the last 4 weeks too, I've been dealing with a lot of GI issues. And so, Mason, maybe you can tell me what to look for because there's a part of me that feels this is Crohn's. Um, you know, and I'm getting the sores in my mouth and everything, and it's just not a fun experience. But again, even though all of that, like you said, Kim and Mason, that's been my story. And again, I just want to spread awareness, and hopefully we can change the um the rhetoric in the medical community and in society that um these invisible real illnesses are real. Um, and it doesn't matter our age because it's not like we went to the market and went to go like, oh, you know what? I think I'll have some fibromyalgia and I'll have some psoriatic arthritis. And I don't care that I'm only in my 20s or 30s. It's okay. Like, know. Um, oh, and by the way, during COVID, I got COVID 3 times. Um, because people weren't careful around me, even though I was wearing a mask. Family members, when we would unmask, unfortunately, they came into contact with somebody with COVID. And of course, that was not a fun experience because I got really, really sick from it. um, yeah, so yeah, these illnesses don't discriminate based on age or race or creed and or ethnicity, even though they're prevalent in certain ethnicities and heritages, it still doesn't discriminate. And if we could just have people be more understanding and not judgmental, because I've been judged by an ex-boss who asked um, why I have a handicap placard and I don't look sick. And I was so upset by that. I had to change parking structures and I didn't go to HR on that boss, but I went to HR saying I need a more accessible parking spot. And they couldn't argue with that. But yeah, so there's been a lot of, gaslighting. Um, and it sucks. And but yeah, I guess that's my story, and I know I talked forever and I'm so sorry.
No, no, no. I mean, this is real life. And I think that's why me and Mason love talking to people with, like, I don't want to say amazing stories because it's not amazing what happened to you,
Right.
but it's amazing in the way that you described it. And I mean, wow, I'm speechless. I mean, you have such an amazing attitude despite everything. And I think that there's one thing that people can take away is why it's so important to advocate for yourself, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's very important to advocate for yourself, because if you don't advocate for yourself, no one will. Um,
Exactly.
so yeah, it's really interesting. Just sitting back actually this time and just hearing you share your story because it's very different, isn't it? What it's better once you just talk and you decide what you want to say, rather than us ask questions after questions. Because we like asking questions, but at the same time, it's better if you explain to us what you have, rather than and then we go back and forward because it's different. Just to listen and that you've been through a lot like COVID, like you speak about COVID. Not many people do that now. Speak about it and talk about it, and it's hard because a lot of people think even nowadays gone. It's not here anymore. And even today, I go for a walk earlier and got people over across the road wearing masks. And I went to a convention the other week actually. I go to Comic Con sometimes and go see the actors, and Doctor Who normally, but well, there was a person. I was really curious because he wore a mask. The only person there wore a mask, and I said to him, I brought him aside. I didn't straight away, but I just wondered. I said to him, Why have you got a mask?" And he said, "Well, I have to be really careful." Um, and I said, "Why do you have to be careful?" Um, and he was like, I have Crohn's, so I have to be very
Oh,
mindful, and I take all this medication." And like you said earlier, actually, not everyone with Crohn's is the same. So some people with
right.
Crohn's may not understand other people with Crohn's, and it could be the same for every single chronic illness out there. Um, and he said he wear it in close spaces. So he wear it like, say you're on there's a show going on, loads of people in there, and you'll find actually if you go into like a show or something, you just be quiet for 5 seconds. 5 seconds, be quiet, and you'll hear loads of people sneezing and coughing. Um, and then I was when I went to that actually, I had to move. It's like you're dodging, isn't it? I think in the first episode, me and Kimberly thought about like the an apocalypse, like the COVID or just in general life for people with chronic illness. It's like an apocalypse, but not a Walking Dead apocalypse, an apocalypse where you've got to dodge everyone. So say someone's coughing over there, or someone's sneezing. Sneezing's even worse. You've got to dodge, and people who maybe don't have anything wrong or don't have a chronic illness, they say it's fine, it's gone. They've sneezed and it's gone. Like even earlier today, I went when I go for my walk because I go walk every day. You've got this person next to me coughing. He's coughing, not hands on the mouth, anything. And I shout out, "Put your hands on your mouth." No, I said so sarcastically. I said, "Are you gonna put your hands on the mouth then?" It's like when when you open the door for someone and they don't say thanks, and you think, "I shouldn't open that for you."
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I still wear my mask everywhere I go, and I remember when they did away with the mask mandate out here in California. Um, I would get so many stares from people, and but at that point I didn't care. I'm like, I know my story, and I could die if I get really sick. Like, despite all the medications I'm on, I mean, I'm on a bunch of medications for everything. And, I'm on two medications that suppress my immune system even more because those are biologics for, and I don't know if you're on one similar, Mason, for Crohn's, or if there's a different treatment that you're on, but I'm on a few of those. And so it suppresses your immune system even more. Even in the hospital, I was wearing a mask, like working, and I'd have a lot of coworkers ask, "Why are you wearing a mask?" And I'm like, "I'm immunocompromised. I can't, I can't risk it." And yeah, and if I go into like a crowded room of people, oh, I'm gonna have a mask on. And it's just crazy how people like judge you for looking out for your own health. But at a certain point, and I think you and I had talked about this, Kim, like we just don't care. And I still get looks when I come out, in my car when I've parked in a handicap spot. But right now I'm still using a cane, so I feel I don't get as many looks. But people will look at me when I have a cane because they look at my age. And it's just like, what, I don't even care anymore. Like maybe deep down it hurts, and it's just like, I just wish you knew my story. But but it's gotten to the point I just, all right, I'm doing what's right for me, and I'm not hurting anybody by doing this. So
Yeah. That's how I felt too when the mask mandate, it wasn't even a mandate anymore and I would still wear my mask. I felt a little conscious before, but then I got to the like the mindset. I was like, well, they're not going to see me. Are they going to help me when I'm sick? Stuff like that. And I think that that's something that I wish we didn't have, but sadly it is part of the world.
right,
People are going to judge other people, but or maybe I'm just at the age where I just don't even care. I'm like, judge me all
right,
you want.
right.
Yeah, I I am like to answer your question. Actually, I do take like biologics for I take biologics for my Crohn. So like I take things that it really dampens my immune system, so I've always had to be careful that I take azathioprine. But azathioprine ever since I was diagnosed, really, so that really dampens my immune system. And then I take Humira, like injection at home. I did take infusions before but they stopped after a year. But yes, I take things. But there are people out there that judge you for it. But you might get other people who have the same illness as you. They say, I can do this, I can go to work, I can do this, and they won't understand that so sometimes some people with the same illness as you may feel like that. Not everyone, but some. So some people will be like, you can still do things, which you probably can. You can still do things, but not everyone's different. It's like we were saying, everyone has a different journey. Just because you do something doesn't mean I can. Um, it,
Right.
it's like when you're at school, like you have everyone different levels, like in maths and English and stuff like that, and you don't expect everyone to know everything, and some people do.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I was on Humira. That was the first biologic I was put on, and I I feel like they need to come up with another word, but I've noticed in our community they say, "Oh, well, I failed that biologic." I feel like we could come up with a different word. Maybe just we didn't respond well to it. And it wasn't that I like had a reaction to it. It just unfortunately didn't help. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um I'm
yeah,
so sorry. Sorry, one.
yeah. Some biologics work and some don't. I think, and yeah.
My mom is the best, and she brought me Chick-fil-A.
Hey,
So that's what I went to go get. I don't know if you
love it.
guys have tried it. Or Mason,
Right.
do you guys have that in the UK?
No, I never heard of it.
Oh, it's the best.
I never heard of it.
Anyways, sorry, off topic.
No, no, it's good. It's fine. But
Yeah.
yeah, but
Um,
yeah, I think that when we were just saying, Kimberly, that about how people can have maybe the same illness but not understand your illness, your symptoms.
Yeah, that's what Ashley said. She was like, every kind of illness is like on a spectrum. And I loved how you said that someone else in your family had fibromyalgia, right? And like their
oh,
prescription was different than yours, and how you chose not to, let it take over your life. And I admire that.
yeah, that was a family friend, but my mom last year just got diagnosed with fibromyalgia. And the crazy part is she's having the exact same GI issues I'm having. And again, and it's not like it's the flu or like we came into contact because the timing of when we've seen each other doesn't add up. But even with our GI issues, they're like mirror, but they're not mirror. And then Mason and I were also talking, he was mentioning how he's on Humira, and I was on Humira. That was one of the first biologics I was put on. And I was saying, I don't like how in our community we're like, oh, well, I failed that one. Like they'll say, oh, I failed that biologic. And it's like, I feel like we should say, oh, I just, didn't respond well to it, or it just wasn't, um, didn't work for me. Like instead of saying I failed, because by using that terminology, I've failed 4 biologics now. So, um,
Yeah.
and it's just like I don't look at it as a failure. My body has a mind of its own, as we're all very aware that our bodies have a mind of their own, and it's just not the medication for us. So
Yeah.
on to the next one.
And it's
Um,
true. It's like the way we throw energy out into the world, or the way we speak to ourselves. Like our bodies
right.
hear us. Like my sister's actually the one who taught me about like energy and stuff like that. She's like, don't call the negative energy, like always speak for yourself. And I like that. I like how because that's also another part in the chronic illness stuff that I feel like not a lot of people talk about, like the way you put things out. Like the way when I say, hopefully I'm gonna get my fourth and last surgery. Like I know that realistically, maybe that's not the case, but I'm wishing it, and I'm
Right, of
just
course.
spreading it.
Yeah, and my birthday wish this year was I don't want to have any more surgeries, and unfortunately, that's not the case. So I'll try next year. I mean, what can you do? Um, and I know I'm gonna need more surgeries, like with my spinal condition. Like I know, and I know eventually, and I've already been told I'm gonna need the other knee replaced and my other hip replaced eventually. And it is what it is, right? So,
Yeah. And
gonna
it's not
party
being
until I can't.
yes, and like before my mom would when I would say like I know that I'm gonna get more surgeries and stuff like that, she would be like, well, don't call it. I'm like, I have to be realistic. Like, sadly, I have a chronic illness, and surgeries do come. Yeah, I don't want them to come often, but I know realistically in my mind it's gonna happen. And I think that helps too when we're realistic about our goals and our wishes, because we know that we
Right.
can't get away from it.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I feel like we could have our own series. I love how I'm inviting myself. We could have our own series on just like different ways to like maybe turn certain terminology that we have in the community and put a positive spin on it, or brainstorm on other ideas, or
Maybe we should.
because
Maybe
yeah,
we should.
because just to give people hope, because unfortunately we're not always given that in our conditions.
Yeah.
And sometimes people don't have a great support system, which, as we all know, stress really can also impact our chronic illnesses and send us into a really bad headspace, as well as just flare us up. And it's like we already have those issues, like as is. So now add all these external factors. And so if we could like be that beacon of hope for others, that's what I'm all about. So whatever that may look like, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And isn't it funny how, at least for me, like my doctor would be like, just don't stress and you will hopefully not get flare ups. And I'm like, what? I mean, I'm 12 years old getting diagnosed with this. How am I not going to stress? And
Right.
I find it just at this point, what's the vocabulary? It's like, is it hyperbole? Or when something is like contradicting? I
Oh,
have it on the tip of my
I
tongue.
mean, yeah, it could be
Yeah.
or an oxymoron. Yeah.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, yeah, you're telling me don't stress, but then I have this. And just talking about stress, I want to show you guys. I have this stress relief body cream.
Is that from Bath and Body Works, the eucalyptus? Yeah.
Yes. And I was just like, well, let's see if it's gonna help. I don't know. I just need something to wash away all the stress.
The smell, the scent makes me very relaxed. I can't say the lotion works for me, and I can't really put the lotion on, but the scent. So like I'll get the soaps or the candles for that. But yeah, anything with like spearmint, eucalyptus, makes me feel really calm. Sometimes coconut too, because it makes me feel I'm on a tropical island somewhere. Um, but yeah. Um, what was I gonna say? You triggered my memory for something, and now I can't. Oh, the other thing is if we have like looming surgeries, like surgeries looming, even if they might not be for 10 years, but we don't know that. And we hope our bodies know that, but I don't know if they know that either, So, and to be told, like, oh, hey, you're gonna need this eventually, I mean, that's very stressful.
I mean, it has to be like the worst thing. I'd rather not know until that time comes. But if they tell me, oh, you're going to have this surgery coming up, I'm just going to be stressing and I'm going to have super bad
Right,
anxiety until that day happens. So,
right. We
and I can't help
perseverate
it.
on it, right? Yeah, and it's like, wouldn't the average person do that if they know they have an upcoming surgery? And again, these
Exactly.
aren't like elective I mean, yes, technically they're elective, but it's not like we're deciding to get something enhanced, if you
Oh,
will,
yeah.
or like getting plastic surgery, like I'm getting my nose done or something. These are things to help us function and live better.
Mhm.
So yeah, we can choose to have that, and they're elective where it's not like an emergency surgery, perhaps, although I know with your story, Kim, that was a little different, of course. But it's not like we're choosing like, okay, yeah, just replace my joints, please. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, there is
What's
a
going to
part of
make
me that wishes I could just get it all over with so I can move on, but that can't happen, unfortunately. And then, um, Mason, have you had any surgeries with your Crohn's, or it's more manageable where you're not there, or
I
you're not on
nearly
that
did.
trajectory?
I nearly had
I'm
a
sorry.
surgery.
Okay.
I nearly did, but because when I got diagnosed, they said to me, "It's a good job I got diagnosed when I did because I probably would have had needed surgery because the Crohn's I have, I've got a bit of ulcerative colitis and Crohn's, like
Okay.
in between the two, and they said I've got something called patchy pans, so that's one of the worst forms of Crohn's. So say ever need a stoma, in my life, it wouldn't be a reversal, so it would be a permanent one.
Oh
So
wow.
if I ever needed one, so I've never had surgery because of my Crohn's, but I've had surgery. I have had surgery in my life when I was younger, um, but uh, that's not nothing to do with Crohn's. It's got something to do, I think, with something else. Um,
That's okay.
but I can't remember really. I remember I went to London, had a surgery. I got a bear when I came out. Um, but yes, I've never had any, but of course you do fear these things whenever, even I guess even if you had it before, you've had surgery, so you always fear that you don't want it. None of us want it, because it can. It's just scary, isn't it? Thinking about those kind of things. I think whenever you get a chronic illness, though, that is at the top of your mind about having surgery.
Yeah, and just coming to terms with your new normal. Um, and again, thankfully with my team of doctors, they know if I've established in a relationship with them enough now that they know if I come to them with a symptom and I tell them like this is not normal. This is not my fibro. This is like I literally go down the list. Um, they listen. But like with these GI issues, I kind of had to push, which I was a little surprised about, like getting all this testing and stuff. And I'm still waiting on results, but that's been very stressful too. I'm not feeling well. I'm not really taking in a lot of nutrients or being able to keep them in, and I've lost weight and I feel very fatigued more so than I normally do. And that's another thing we didn't even talk about, how the
Yeah.
fatigue is. like forget about the pain, the fatigue I feel sometimes is worse in many ways, because
Mm.
even if we're so exhausted, like sometimes you still can't sleep, and it's just like this continuous cycle that there's really no way out of. And so I hate when people are like, oh well, just get some sleep. I'm like, oh, I wish it was so simple like that.
Yeah. Like I remember when you guys were saying about finding it hard to sleep when you're in pain. Because I remember when I was in a lot of pain, I couldn't sleep at all. I mean, it's hard, isn't it? It's hard to not think about the pain while you're sleeping because you can't. You might have a few hours if you're lucky, but
Right.
uh, um, it's not hard, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And then they're like, well, just do this, and it's like it's not that simple. um so I'll find myself on my phone, and I know that's a no-no, but it's like, I feel like I can only do so much of the right thing. So I'll just like be on Instagram, or I'll read, or something, like just try to get my mind off of the pain, but knowing, okay, I can't sleep, I'm tired, so tired, but I'm up, I guess, so let's make the best of it. I mean, I don't know what else to do. I don't know if you guys have um different recommendations or techniques that you guys do that help you go back to sleep, but
So for me, definitely I like a lot of candles that smell really good, like eucalyptus.
yes.
If I feel well enough, I do have a body scrub that's like recommended for sleep. It's like a scrub that's also eucalyptus, and I put vapor rub. I have a diffuser in my room. Like I try to like shut all the lights, and I
Yeah.
try to fall asleep to like listening to something, whether
Hmm.
that's like a podcast or my favorite show or whatever it is. Or at least if I can't go to sleep, it distracts me from the pain,
Right, exactly.
because that is the worst thing when you are having so much pain, you can't go to sleep, but you can't go to sleep because you have pain. So it's like you said, it's like a cycle, and it was the worst. I know when I had my surgery, like the next day, because I'm on a blood thinner, you know, my dressing was like covered in blood and stuff. And you know, I didn't sleep like that night because anesthesia wore off on my foot, and I felt so sick. And then the doctor was like an hour away with traffic. So I was so dizzy. I was, you know, in so much pain, the pain meds and no sleep. It was just horrible. So I got to the doctor's office and I was just managed to say my name. And then I had to like ask for a bag because I had to throw up. And honestly, at that point, I just didn't even care who saw me. I was like, y'all, I feel terrible.
Yeah.
Right. Ugh.
Hard. It's hard.
Yeah, I've been through that too when the anesthesia wears off. Like, it's like, ugh, can you just give me some more so I get sleep? Like, but I know what that's like, and there's not enough painkillers that help at all. So that was the other reason why I had to stay in the hospital with my knee replacement so long. I couldn't get my pain under control. They were giving me like things that were like, like, trying to think, um, that were like a Mentos or
Oh,
or like a Chiclets or something, and it's like this is not doing anything, and I'm like, I'm telling you.
yeah.
And of course, then you deal with, well, you're a drug seeker. I'm like, I'm a social worker in the ER. I know that you think that, but look at my list of issues and and you can see my medications that I'm on. Like, so this isn't working. So please give me something more. So it took a while for them to finally, okay, we'll give you IV Dilaudid, which was the only thing that worked. Even morphine wasn't doing it for me. So,
Oh, I've
uh,
had Dilaudid, especially last year, and it was funny because I was losing my toes. So it was like half my body was dead, half of it was alive. So I go up to the ER and I was like, because they want to start me on like Tylenol first and then
right.
go
Yeah.
to
Like I said, a
Advil.
Mentos. Yeah. Like exactly.
And I was just like, no, I need Percocet. And they looked at me like I was crazy, but I'm like, I know. And to just avoid everything, you know, and at the end of the day, they went from like Percocet, morphine, and then I had to do Dilaudid. And I had my pain was so bad, I had to get like the IV infusion thing where you press a button and it comes
Right.
and
Yeah. The
I think to
pain.
press
Yeah.
the
The pain.
Yeah.
Oh, what's it called? The pain pump. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And I will say that was the best thing ever, but I don't recommend it because once my pain was good enough to where I can go down on it, it's awful. Like I felt like throwing up and stuff, and you get so sleepy on it. It's crazy, but it's good. And trust me, for those of you listening, we're not pain seekers. We literally need this.
Right. Yeah. And like you try like having an amputation or a joint replaced, or even though you haven't been through this, Mason, but part of like your intestines removed, like you're gonna be in pain. And uh, you know, and while it would be great to be pain free all the time, we know in our community that that's just not the case. We can't be on a medication all the time. We do it to be functional.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean if I'm having a very bad flare day, yeah, I might be more groggy and I might take something to knock me out for a little bit, but it's just to get rid of the physical pain. Like,
Yeah.
it's not to self-medicate, it's to, and so that's another interesting thing. And I don't know if it's as common in the UK, Mason, but in the States, due to like the opiate epidemic, and you get a lot of judgment from even nurses. Like you said, Kim, it took a while for them to finally, be like, yeah, you do need a pain pump. And it's like, I'm not a nurse or a doctor, but as a social worker, if I knew that my patient like had several amputations and she's here because she's in so much pain, like I would know, like, okay, you need to give her something like a lot better than Tylenol.
Yeah.
um and they try to keep you, and I get it, but it's just like we're in chronic pain. So not because we've been self-medicating for so long that our tolerance is high, but because this is what we've been prescribed, like we need more. Like, it is is what it is. And so I wish that judgment would go away, and also the differentiation. Um, because I have worked with patients who are substance users. Um, and it's like we know that we're not. We know that we're doing this because we want to, be a functional human being. Um, and have a little less pain today. That's all we're looking for.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I think like for example, hot water bottles tend to help a little bit. But I get a little bit. And then what I did, I don't know if any of you have done this before. When you're in pain, say I don't know, mine was in my like stomach area. Sometimes I would hold it, so I was out somewhere, or just on my own. I'd hold it, but it'd do nothing. Me holding it and squeezing it's gonna help, not gonna help at all. But I don't know. I just done it, and that doesn't help. But I don't know. I don't know if it's like a coping thing. Just to hold it to try and see if that helps. To see the harder you squeeze, the more likely it's gonna go. But I don't think. I think it just makes it worse for me. But don't know if any of
I
you've done that.
yeah. I've done
Yeah,
that like with my migraines. Oh, go ahead, Kim.
I was just gonna recommend, like, I sometimes I have really bad stomach pain and I use like a heat pad,
Yeah, I do
and
heating pads.
that tends to help me drinking
Same,
hot tea as well. But that
same.
was it.
But yeah, no, I've squeezed my forehead so hard before because I'm like, okay, this'll make the pain go away because nothing's working. So I've done that before, and I think because innately we've done that like when we were little kids, like, oh, point to what hurts, oh, my tummy, like things like that. So maybe that's where that comes from. I don't know, and I feel like maybe it's like, okay, if I inflict my own pain, it'll feel better. Like, I don't know. We're trying to be creative here, folks. Like, come up with anything just to make it feel, even go down one pain level. Like, that's okay.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. Like everyone pain level is different, and like
right.
like you guys have already said, like you've rated your pain level today when we speaking. Um, So it's all different. Like I don't know. Your pain levels might change. Like, what are your pain levels now, guys? Are they the same or have they changed?
Surprisingly, mine went a little bit down, and it's, I think, because I'm laughing, I'm distracted, you know? So maybe instead of a 7, it's like a 5 is tolerable, you know? So for me, like, it helps just laughing and talking to other people, especially people who understand me.
Yeah.
Right. Um, I mean, I second that. Mine has kind of stayed the same. But it's okay. And you guys can't see off camera, but I'm sitting on 2 heating pads right now, so maybe that's why it's just at least stayed the same. And I have a ton of pillows I'm sitting on too. Just again because of my spine. So yeah. Um,
Yeah, that's
so,
awesome.
but again, yeah, distracting away from it by talking to great people who understand and validate where I can be myself as well. And I don't have to justify, like, hey guys, I'm not feeling well. Like, you guys just know. So, because you've been there. Um, so that really is so therapeutic in so many ways. So I really thank you guys again for giving me this opportunity, and meeting you again, Kim, and my soul sister, long lost soul sister, and then Mason too. You're good people, I can tell as well, and empathic, and um, you know, yeah, this has just been an amazing day and opportunity. So
It's been really good fun. Um,
yeah,
yeah, we spoke for a long time today.
sorry,
Yeah,
sorry I
no,
bored you.
no, you didn't. It was very good, nice just to sit back this time. Um, because it's nice. It gives me and Kimberly a break from asking questions all the time, I
There you
guess.
go. There-
But it's very nice. Like it's much easier just to do it the way we done it today. But before we go, is there anything else you want to say, Ashley? just to finish up, maybe more advice or where people can find you if they want to see your podcast and stuff?
Sure. I'll speak to both. Again, in terms of advocating for yourself, if something doesn't make sense to you, if your questions aren't being answered, if you don't feel like you're being heard, that's okay. Switch physicians. I know it's a pain to start that journey over again, but they're out there. You just have to find it and know what questions to ask. And it's okay. Because again, as Mason has said, as Kim has said, as I have said, you have to advocate for yourself, because if you don't, who is going to? While there's advocates in different, sectors and stuff, you know your body the best. You know what you're experiencing. So just learn to advocate for yourself, and it's okay, and you're not alone, and there's a lot of resources out there on how to do that. In terms of finding me, so I have my personal Instagram, which is chronically Gimperella, and then also the chronic dot convos, which is for my podcast, Chronic Convos. And you can find me on Spotify, or if you want to see the visual version, I'm on YouTube as well under Chronic Convos. And they just got a TikTok started too, so that'll be up and running today. So you can find me on there too. But yeah, please reach out if there's something you want to hear on the podcast or have a question for me. I love to just help others and share my story, and love to hear about yours too. So again, Mason and Kim, thank you so much again for this opportunity, and for giving me this platform. And I hope we can definitely collaborate in the future in whatever fashion that may look like. Or if you ever need a placeholder, somebody just to do all the talking, you can have me back, and I'll just talk the whole time. If you're like, I'm not feeling like talking too much today, because I told you I'm a talker. But yeah, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
Definitely. Thank you. We can definitely do something, if it's a series or a thing where we just talk about different topics around chronic illness, because there's so much, like we spoke about fatigue today, which we didn't really speak about. Like, you could do certain topics that we spoke about today in just one episode, so
Right.
it's very broad things to talk about. Um, but Kimberly, do you have any final words?
I love talking to you again, Ashley and Mason. You already know you're like my brother in this podcast journey. Like, we've been through so much together. And it's just wonderful when you connect with people all over the world. Like, I know, Mason, you're in the UK, Ashley, you're in California. And if it wasn't for, the good old Instagram and our chronic illnesses, we wouldn't have connected. So for that,
Right.
I am grateful.
Same.
As always, I'm your self-love sister, and I'm at strong_self-love on Instagram. My DMs are always open, and I love meeting new people.
Yes, I think we all love meeting new people, and this is a great way to do it. But to anyone listening today, watching today, we hope you have enjoyed this episode where we spoke about a lot of things today, where you can relate, you can get in touch with Peter if you want to appear, or have questions for Kimberly or Ashley, where you can go on their shows as well, because there's 3 podcasts. But yeah, it's pretty fun, pretty fun. But yeah, we hope you have a nice week and day, and we will see you in the next episode of the Vulnerable series. And yeah, I'm sure that Ashley will be back at some point where we will do something. We'll do something together. I'm unsure when, but of course we'll arrange it and everything, and yeah, we'll have some more fun. But yeah, thanks to Kimberly and Ashley. I hope you have a nice rest of your day, and we'll see you in the next episode, everyone.